friends, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Maria. If this happens to be your first time visiting, welcome to Siempre Infinitos DIY. So happy to have you here today because I get to share with you how I made a cranberry pie. So here I have a piece of styrofoam. This is actually from a package. I just went ahead and cut the piece that I needed. Of course, you want to make sure it's the right size. I will be gluing it down, but not before I give it a couple of coat of paint. So this is the color that I am going to be using. Now, it does say neon on there, and no, it does not glow in the dark. So once I gave it my first coat of paint, and then I went ahead and let it dry and went in and gave it about 2 to 3 more. You want to make sure that it dries in between, because otherwise when you add the second paint, you're, as you can see there where there's like a whole bunch, it's just gonna, you're gonna be moving it back and forth, especially if your styrofoam is soft, so, or smooth. So you just want to make sure that you let it dry, come back in, and then paint it once more or as many times as you want. Once it dries up, it will give you a matte color. So I wanted to look like it was bubbly when you bring it out of the oven, and I gave it some high gloss varnish. Of course, I let it dry again, and in the meantime, while I was letting it dry, I was working on my pie crust. And here I'm using, I believe this color is called cookie dough. And I am just going to add this all the way around. Now, I did not painted this until the end of the video once I was done with my crust, well, my pie. If you want, you can go right ahead and paint it, just let it dry. But what you want to do, depending on you, if you will see how I made mine, so, or how I painted mine, what I did, I gave it that dry brush technique to it, where you just get some paint and then you just dab it on a piece of napkin or paper, and then just go in there and give it a couple of strokes. So really depending on you, I did that because, again, I wanted to look like it just came out of an oven. So here I'm using tip number 88. And then what I'm going to be using, actually, this is going to be, I guess we can call them like stars, if that makes any sense. I mean, if they probably don't even look like stars, right? But anyways, so I decided to go with 5 big sizes of this pretty, it almost looked like a star slash kind of flower. And then, of course, if you want to make them bigger, just keep pressing or squeezing the piping bag, and they'll just get bigger and bigger depending on you. So here I have the smaller one, and then this is a size 2, if I'm correct. If I will be adding the numbers of the size of the icing tips in here. So you do want to let this dry overnight. Now that it's dry, because we will be painting them. So I am going to be using, I believe is Carmel, and also milk chocolate. So what I'm going to do first with the Carmel is you want to use small little brushes. Here I have 2 different sizes of brushes. I just chose to stick with one. You can use 2 different ones. Well, it really depends on you. So with the light brown, which is the Carmel, right in the crease of the icing, in between, I'm going to just paint that. You can also do that, like I said, the dry brush technique, which you just dab some paint and then just dab it all on your paper and then just go in there, because I wanted mine to look like it got burnt on the top, and then as it goes down, it gets lighter. You will see the difference once I show you in a minute. So some of it was dark and then the others were light. So I just try to imagine, like, you know, if I would use one of those, if you bake, then you probably know what a torch is for baking. But anyway, so yeah, you know, you would burn, and then whatever's at the bottom, of course, it would not get burned. It will be lighter or something like that. So I'll show you just in a minute. So here it is. So what I did with the darker paint, the darker color, which is the milk chocolate, I went in and then I just started doing like some strokes right on the lines of the flower or star, whatever we want to call this design, which I'll show you in just a minute. So here I was doing the dry brush technique that I was telling you about, that I wanted to do it lighter. So as you can see, like the very first one that I start working, do you see like half of it or most of it all is dark, and then like towards the crust is lighter? So that's where I started doing the dry brush technique. So I was just going lighter and lighter, and then of course it was dark. I should have done the whole thing instead of just half of it. But anyway, you can paint yours however you want. This is how I wanted mine. I might go in there and try to do it, but then again, it doesn't really matter because I will be adding something that will be covering it up. So here is where I want to make those lines dark. So that's why I went with the darker brown, which is the milk chocolate. And then I just brushing over, so just where you can see like the dark of the lines, you know, if that makes any sense. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say here. But anyway, so what I did to the big ones, I'm just going to do to the little ones. I'm not going to use the caramel color on the little small ones because those are a little bit too tiny. Again, if you want to do that to yours, go for it. But this is what I decided to do with mine. So as of right now, I really like how this is looking. It's actually, you know, whenever I do a fake bake, I always try to imagine how they look if it was the real thing. So this is actually also a little time consuming. So do take your time when you're doing this because you don't want to get too much dark. And if you do get a lot of, you know, certain places is too dark or too whatever, you add too much paint, you can always go in there with Q-tip, dab it in water, and then just go in there and wipe that off. So no worries. But you do want to make sure this is completely dry, because when you go in there with, if it's still somewhat wet and not completely dry, when you're brushing, you will start pushing in the spackle, and that's not going to be good. All right, so now we're going to be adding some greenery, and then of course I needed my hot glue for this. Please be careful when you're using hot glue, because if you're clumsy like myself, you will burn your fingers. All right, so this is from my stash as well, my Christmas stash. I just went to my, you know, where I keep my trees and my garlands and all that, and well, don't tell nobody, but I took my scissors with me. And you can just figure out the rest. Anyways, so right at the where the stems are at the bottom of the leaf or the whatever, this greenery, you just want to make sure you hide those so they won't show. And also when you're using hot glue, I'm sure a lot of you know this, you will be getting a lot of this glue, little, what do they call it, like glue spider webs or glue webs or whatever they're called. So I thought that I've gotten all of them out, and then of course when I went into the bright light that I have, I started noticing there's a bunch of them in there. Very disguising. Anyway, so this is giving me a really holiday vibe, and I really love how it's turning out. I hope I inspire you to make one of these if you have not already, because I was actually inspired by you know, over on Pinterest, and I wanted to do this myself. So really love how this is coming out. And then of course here are the cranberries, and these are, there's really any, just add them wherever you think. I just went ahead and glue them down wherever I thought they would look cute. I was playing around with them before I decided to glue them down, just to make sure that I was going to have enough, or if I had to take my pliers and go back to my Christmas tree and start snipping some of them off. But anyways, so yes, so not only am I using spackle, clay, greenery, because well, this is a fake bake, right? I am going to be adding some star anise and some cloves, because that is going to make it look even more, well, realistic. And the more that I was adding these two spices, it started smelling like a kitchen, you know, and I really was getting very like that festive vibe and all of that. So you see my crust there, how light it is. Well, I went in with my chocolate or my milk chocolate color, and I just started doing that dry brush technique all on the crust. Now if you want, you can do this in the beginning, or you can do what I did and wait until towards the end, which I wish I should have done it now that I'm looking at it, towards in the beginning rather than at the end. But anyways, my friends, so here is how it's looking, and if I inspire you, I hope I did. Let me know in the comments down below. And I'll show you in just a minute how it looks all done with the crust being painted. Also, before I forget, right in the crust, which is, you get a closer look here, later I went in and I added some of that glossy high gloss varnish on it. But yeah, so thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really hope I inspire you, and I hope you subscribe to my channel if you have yet not. So don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe. And until the next time, my friends, stay safe, be kind, bye.